This is the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist and an empowerment coach for women. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now here is today's episode. Episode 4. In today's episode, you will hear Lynn and I share some ways that you can actually take back control from the anxiety if it is trying to manage your life. Hope you enjoy it. Well, welcome, sisters. I'm so excited about today's guest. I have Lynn Dutrow on, and she is a licensed psychotherapist and she is a coach. And I'm going to share with you just a little bit more about Lynn before I have her come on and share more about what she does. So Lynn has a passion for encouraging others to opt out of overwhelm, slap their self-doubt silly, and stop waiting for the imposter police to show up at their door. She has been a student of human nature as long as she can remember and has a variety of experiences, including being an educator, school psychologist, and motorcycle salesperson. When she grows up, Lynn hopes to be an inspiration for others to empower themselves and is currently working toward that dream by having a private practice as a coach and a counselor, specializing in encouraging clients to embrace their stress and anxiety and to use them to grow and expand. She also encourages helpers, healers, and creatives to talk back to their doubts and fears and is their accountability partner in being the business beacons they desire to be. So welcome, Lynn. I'm so excited that you're here today.
Thanks for having me, Nicole. I'm very excited too. I'm really nervous, but I know better. I know to just label that as excitement. And so that's what I am. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. I love it. And as I was reading over your bio, I was also trying not to laugh because I'm like, I am sure our listeners today can really go, the imposter police, what? Oh my gosh, because it totally shows up at different points in life.
Oh yeah.
So I would love, would you mind sharing just a little bit more about what it is that you do when you work with the professionals, the entrepreneurs, the healers? How is it that you are helping them really, as you're saying, kind of get to know their anxiety and embracing that, but still moving forward? How do you do that?
Oh, that's a great question. So a lot of it is just working with them to recognize the stuck and recognize that sort of like quicksand. You know, people talk about that the reason that you get stuck in quicksand is that you fight against it, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what I find is that most of us are, whether it's they're trained, conditioned, that society has sort of set us up to fight against anxiety, to push against it, to not want it to be there. And so we work on shifting that and reframing it so that whatever way anxiety shows up, that we're working together, we're learning to embrace it and go with it and work with it rather than fighting against it.
Well, and I love that too, because I agree with you. I think there is a lot of messages out there to fight it. And the more we fight it, then it seems like the worse the anxiety can get, the worse the fears start to get versus like what you're doing is like, hey, let's just actually kind of say, hey, it's here, just like you did at the very beginning, going, I'm feeling nervous and I'm going to flip that in my brain to say I'm excited.
Yes.
So physiologically, meaning your body can still have the sweaty armpits and different things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're telling your brain, I'm safe. Yeah. There's no saber-tooth tiger coming at me.
Exactly.
It is all good.
Exactly. And that's what, because the way I envision it too is that, and this helps a lot with people who, the entrepreneurs in particular, people who are their own boss, but they're still looking for that authority figure. And anxiety will step right up to the plate and say, oh, I'll be in charge. So helping them to recognize that. And so it's like, hey, not only is your anxiety not in charge, but you can get your anxiety, you can teach it better social skills, you can make it a better employee, and here's how you do that. And so one of the big things is figuring out how to take action in that direction once they get that reframe and start working with it.
Well, what are some of those ways that as they do start to recognize it, what are some of those kind of action steps? I know you and I have talked many times before that you have some things that you actually do, which I will let you explain kind of how you work. But what are some of those action steps people can take?
Action steps can include things like doing a mind dump. So the first thing that I do in the morning when I get up, especially on days that I may be worried about something that's going on that day, the anxiety monster, is the one shaking me awake, is take out a notebook and just dump all that shit right on into it. And then this isn't as scary. It gives you an idea then what the next step would be. The other thing is that talking back. So when anxiety is playing the game of, well, what if? That's a really important time to say, well, so your anxiety will say, what if this happens? And you say back to it, so fucking what? What if that does happen? And then you answer the question. Because that's one of the biggest ways I find is that we get stuck in that loop. And anxiety is really good at playing that game. So you've got to figure out how to win the game of what if, which is answer the question and then work towards knowing that you can figure out what to do if those what ifs happen.
And what you said even earlier, right, was it's the action steps. So anxiety is all about those future events that have not happened.
Yep.
So as you were saying, whether it's doing the brain dump or not brain dump, mind dump, sorry, that it's more about putting that outside of yourself and even the talking back. It's as if you've created the anxiety, like you said, kind of the gremlin or the monster. It's like this third person that is like, I'm going to talk back to you that what if this happens, like, well, then I could do this or this, and it's not here yet.
Yes.
So these are the steps that I'm taking.
And that's one of the things that works really well with clients is exactly what you just said, is when you can picture your anxiety as this external, when I first started, it's that like the green blobby Mucinex monster. From those commercials.
Yes.
And so whatever form it takes for you, but make it into an external form, make it into something that's not just this diffuse voice in your head, this whole voice of doubt. Like I've evolved it to my voice of doubt shows up as this trio. It's like this a cappella trio, bitchy Brenda and Debbie Downer and Judge Judy. And sometimes they're speaking to me individually, and sometimes all three of them are just chiming in there. And you just talk back to them and say, hey, thanks for showing up. You probably have some amount of valid things to talk to me about. And I'm only going to listen to the things that are actual signals and actionable steps that I can take. And otherwise, you're just noise. I choose not to listen. I choose to sit with it and discern what's really mine to do rather than being reactive to this bitchy trio.
Oh, I love that. And speaking of that, I want to go back to, again, you and I have talked about this and we've kind of chuckled about it, but you've had some pushback with some of the language that you use.
Oh, yeah.
Tell our listeners just a little bit more, like what has kind of happened with this and why you choose to use some of the language that you do.
Okay. So let's go back a little bit. When I was attempting to figure out what my niche was when I went into private practice, I had this very interesting couple of events that happened. And ultimately, it led me to creating a practice that focuses solely on anxiety. And I began, my branding is Auntie Anxiety, AUNTIE. And Auntie Anxiety has evolved into this very sassy character, I guess you could say. And so along with that, I use what I call animated adult language that I sprinkle liberally. And it's very purposeful. I know that I have offended certain people. I've been told that. And for me, it comes from this place of what has evolved in working with my clients is, first of all, I'm over 50 and I just decided not to filter anything anymore. I grew up around a motorcycle shop. I knew all the good words long before anybody else did. I knew how to use them in context. I'm of the opinion that People who swear a lot are actually very honest and intelligent. And all the
Mm-hmm.
research shows that if you read all that great research that you find on Facebook. And, and so for me, it's about getting people's attention. It's about shaking people up, because one of the things that anxiety does is it makes us really buy into following all of the rules and doing everything right and getting in this very black and white mindset place. And so when I can shake things up and get people's attention, that helps them to say, oh, wait, you don't have to follow all the rules all of the time. Oh, wait, maybe I can talk back to things. Maybe I can. So to me, it's a real big pendulum swing. So when people are stuck, sometimes that language really loosens that up, and it's a real push to the other side, so that, not that they're going to necessarily talk the way that I talk, but it's going to give them this opportunity to find their range and what's going to work for them.
Well, I also like too, I think it speaks somewhat really to females in general. And in that sense that we're, I was just having conversations with some other folks this week about following the rules so much.
Oh, yeah.
And as you're saying, it's kind of like waking people up, of really paying attention to what am I telling myself, and how am I presenting myself? And am I in alignment with that?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I'm like, oh yes, this is great, everything is just fine, and inside I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. This is the worst thing ever. I am not going to be congruent. So being able to check in with yourself and saying, okay, if I'm not wanting to do this, it is okay for me to say no, or no, not this time. Let me do it another time, whatever that may be, whether it's business decisions or, being involved in an event or hanging out with friends, whatever that may be. So I love that, just kind of shaking the rut up.
Right. And that's that, we talked about like imposter syndrome stuff. And that's where we just keep feeling like if we just keep doing and we just keep doing, but there's that part of us in the background going, oh my God, someone's going to figure this out. Someone's going to figure out. And we can't, like you said, the congruency, we're not seeing clearly what other people see. And so it becomes this thing of get to this place of awareness. And if I can wake people up to start being aware by saying, fuck, well, then that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even back to, I know you're going to edit some of this out, but I'm having my own issues with it right now, and I know that this is what so many people experience. You said something about, oh, well, we had this conversation before. And right away, my brain took that opportunity to go, oh, there's a particular answer that she wants. There's something she wants me to say. And I fall right back into that, the good girl, the follow the rules, and anxiety jumps right in there and says, oh, I've got an opportunity. I'm going to take it. I'm going to make her mind go blank, and the reality is, I know we could talk about anxiety. We could talk about this for days, and you don't have a particular thing that you want from me.
Right.
But it's so easy, even all of us who've done this work, that you fall right back into that so quickly. And so then you have to take that moment and laugh and be willing to talk about it and say, this is what happens.
And I so appreciate you owning that and just putting that vulnerability out there, Lynn, because it is so true. As you and I are both in this field that we deal specifically with anxiety issues and fears and working through that and taking those action steps. But it doesn't mean we're not immune to that. Nobody is.
Nobody
Absolutely.
is. Nobody is immune to it. And I that's what, as I move forward with my work, I want people to know that I don't have all of this figured out. I have to do the same shit you do every day. And I just choose to do it. And I choose to reframe. I choose to look at this as opportunity and know that this is how we all grow. And so I embrace my anxiety. I appreciate it. Every once in a while, I want to slap it around when it's being particularly obnoxious. And yet, I keep showing up. I'm not going to let it be in charge. I'm not going to let it win the game.
Well, I love what you're talking about so much too. It's really that mindset where you
Oh
have
yeah.
shifted the mind and saying it either A can, I know you and I both really use the analogy of driving the car, and you use
Hmm.
that within your websites and some of your blog posts and
Yes.
things. And it's so true that it's like I can choose to let it really run everything. Or when I have that awareness, I can say, dude, take a back seat.
Hmm.
I've got the wheel, you do not. And that really becomes those action steps that even though I feel nervous right now, or even though I feel my armpits are sweating or my hands are sweaty or whatever, I'm still taking that step forward because I have this dream that I'm going after, or I want this relationship to
Yes.
be better, different, whatever that may be.
Absolutely. I love it. I love that analogy because I'm trying to think where, I guess it's Elizabeth Gilbert. I love the whole thing where,
Yes.
dude, you don't even get to play with the radio.
Yes.
That's my thing. It's like, just sit back there. I find my duct tape, when that voice is like, okay, I don't, this is not the time. So, I have this really pretty, colorful duct tape but it right over your mouth and until, I could deal with you later.
Yes, I love that. Do you notice for yourself, and I'll share some of my process too, but do you notice that once you really acknowledge that fear that comes up or the voice of doubt that comes up, that after a while, as you're still taking your action steps, that you really recognize like it really is sitting in the back seat, and it's like it sometimes actually disappears because you're in motion, or that you are letting your mind just be more present. Do you see that shift in yourself when you're doing these steps?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what I work with clients on is there's no guarantees and there's no formula to say, okay, in this particular time, if I just do this, this, and this, that it'll go away, because that still puts them in a place, and I puts myself in that place of that you're fighting it. I mean, think about
Hmm.
if somebody were saying to you, I want to off you, are you going to be cooperative? If
Right.
they want to get rid of you. So there's never a guarantee. It's more about the process of increasing the likelihood that if you're willing to embrace it, if you're willing to accept it and put it in the back seat, but have it along for the ride, that it's more likely that you're going to get it to cooperate and you're going to get you. And then when you just get back into your process, that's a lot of where I use humor.
Hmm.
I love Dave Carbonell's, he uses the aha. So it's, you acknowledge and accept that the anxiety is there. You use humor. And for me, that's part of this creation of anti-anxiety and the compassionate ass kicker and using the language. That's the humor part for me. And so when
Hmm.
I can be humorous and talk about slapping myself doubt silly, then you get back. The other A is just, getting back. I can't remember what his actual A is, but you go back to whatever you were doing,
Hmm.
and so that's what you're talking about. So that is my process is, and there's no guarantee. Sometimes I go
Right.
back to my process and I'm still feeling, that I still got the sweaty pits and the racing mind or whatever, but I'm more willing once I go through that process to keep going. I don't let it stop me.
Yeah. And I like too that you're talking about it's like there's doesn't mean there's one way either,
No.
right? So whether it's the mind dumping, it's the talking back to it, it's externalizing that fear, that doubt. I do a lot of the mindfulness
Hmm.
stuff where I do talk about meditation and being able to
Yeah.
be more in that present moment. So sometimes you may have one thing that really really truly works really well,
Hmm.
and other times like you're saying like, yep, I sat back down to get working on this task again and my mind is still kind of going all over the place. And so that maybe it's like, okay, then maybe you just need to get up and literally walk for a little bit or shake it off,
Exactly.
physically shake it off.
And I think
So, yeah.
that's the important part. There is no one size fits all. There's lots of
Hmm.
ways to approach this. And the main thing starting with just accepting that for
Hmm.
whatever reason, you are more anxious in this moment than usual. And what are you going to do about it? So the
Yeah.
antidote for anxiety is always action. And those action steps are going to look different for different people.
And I think as you and I have talked before as well, it's like as we're taking those action steps, I find it so to me, I just love it because one, the confidence level begins to grow. And I love being able to witness that in my clients
Mm-hmm.
because you're seeing them like, oh my gosh, this is what used to happen. And then it's like they're blossoming right in front of your eyes
Yes.
because they're taking those action steps. And
Yes.
so is what you're saying. It's like, first you identify it. You just like, okay, here it is. I'm embracing it. I'm taking action. You begin to gain that momentum. You begin to gain more confidence in yourself.
Yes.
And so every time we grow,
Yeah.
we know that anxiety and imposter sometimes syndrome will come back,
Yeah.
but it also can take a different form too, in the sense like it doesn't have as much power as it may have had in the past.
Yes, because it definitely wants you to consider yourself to be incompetent.
Yeah.
And so the more you take action and prove to yourself that you are in fact competent, then anxiety doesn't have the foothold to get in there and say you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gaining competence and confidence, and you do that through taking action.
Yes. I love it. I love it. So I'm curious, Lynn. I know one of my questions that I was going to ask kind of randomly is over the years, how you've really continued to step into and evolve as not only just as a person, as a business person, as a mom, as a wife, all of that. What are some of the things that have helped you stay inspired and taking action to face some of those fears? As again, as all of us have faced at different points in times, what has helped you stay or kind of inspired you over either currently or over the years to face these things?
Oh, wow. So I would say when I reach out, when I get out of my own head, because I do tend to be
Yeah.
an introvert. And so I can get really stuck in my own stuff in my own head. And so when I've been willing to do two things. One is to accept that and embrace it and find ways to productively be by myself. So like one of my things is when I made a decision that I was going to get up at least an hour earlier than the rest of the household because that was going to set the tone for my day. And so what that means is I get up what most people would be considering, fairly early. But that has made a huge difference for me because I'm able to set the tone. That's when I do that mind dump. That's when I take care of some of what I feel like are the priorities and the most important things of the day. So that has been helpful to nurture the introvert in me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other piece of it is working with and staying connected with people like yourself who are doing great work, similar work, inspiring work to empower others, because that's definitely a passion is if I can do this, other people can do it. And I would really love to see, when like you had said earlier, when you're working with somebody and they have that aha moment, they become, aware, they start to take action. There's no better feeling than that to know that you've helped somebody else get unstuck and get moving, to do what they're here to do. So, the coaches that I've worked with, the, colleagues that I've connected with, that keeps me inspired and moving forward, definitely.
Oh, I love it. I have heard so many people talk about what you're saying is getting up earlier in the morning, that they too have a very similar experience of just like, wow, it's been life altering for them.
Yes.
And the other piece of that is having that support system, is being able to just sometimes when those, again, moments of doubts come up or seeing things that are, it's like, wow, that's really inspiring. And knowing it's like, it's okay for us to talk about it and support one another. And that's part of what this podcast is, is really trying to support other women out there throughout the world of saying that you matter and you do have something to offer our world. I just want to say thank you so much for being on today, Lynn. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom. And would you mind sharing the ways that the listeners can actually get a hold of you or find out more about you? And I will put all of this on the show notes as well.
Sure. Thank you for this opportunity. So you can always check me out. I have a practice in Frederick, Maryland in person. I also do coaching online. I'm a counselor and a coach. So you can reach me at www.auntiefresh.com. auntieanxiety.com, and that's AUNTIE. And that's mostly my counseling and coaching practice stuff. And I have a new venture where I'm branching off a little that's going to focus specifically on business coaching. And that would be www.thecompassionateasskicker.com. So that's a new venture. I have just a one-page website up to start the conversation with folks who are looking for an accountability ally, someone who can compassionately kick their ass. And so that's a new one for me. So thank you for letting me get that word out there.
Yeah. Well, and I just love the name. So I just think it's great. Yeah.
To me, that's all what this is all about. I have to have that humor piece. I have to, that's the thing that keeps me going is to say it like it is. And so that's what I do. I used to say to people, I get to kick people's asses and make them cry, but cry in a good way, cry in a way that says, okay, I'm ready to take these steps. And so that's where the compassionate ass kicker came from. I will kick your ass in the most compassionate way possible.
Well, I love it. And again, thank you so much for being on.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you found it helpful or inspirational or even encouraging wherever you are right now in your life. If you know of another woman who may find this podcast inspirational or encouraging, please pass this along to her. I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen. Until next time, take care. Sharing your wisdom. And would you mind sharing the ways that the listeners can actually get a hold of you or find out more about you? And I will put all of this on the show notes as well.
Sure. Thank you for this opportunity. So you can always check me out. I have a practice in Frederick, Maryland in person. I also do coaching online. I'm a counselor and a coach. So you can reach me at www.auntieanxiety.com, and that's AUNTIE. And that's mostly my counseling and coaching practice stuff. And I have a new venture where I'm branching off a little that's going to focus specifically on business coaching. And that would be www.thecompassionateasskicker.com. So that's a new venture. I have just a one-page website up to start the conversation with folks who are looking for an accountability ally, someone who can compassionately kick their ass. And so that's a new one for me. So thank you for letting me get that word out there.
Yeah. Well, and I just love the name. So I just think it's great. Yeah.
To me, that's all what this is all about. I have to have that humor piece. I have to, that's the thing that keeps me going is to say it like it is. And so that's what I do. I used to say to people, I get to kick people's asses and make them cry, but cry in a good way, cry in a way that says, okay, I'm ready to take these steps. And so that's where the compassionate ass kicker came from. I will kick your ass in the most compassionate way possible.
Well, I love it. And again, thank you so much for being on.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you found it helpful or inspirational or even encouraging wherever you are right now in your life. If you know of another woman who may find this podcast inspirational or encouraging, please pass this along to her. I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen. Until next time, take care.